motion to call the meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hold on, we have a meeting.
Stop.
It is, and I'm sorry for the
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, does anyone have any conflicts of interest they would like to disclose?
I have nothing to disclose.
I have nothing. Nope, no one. Okay, moving on. Our first item is a public hearing to consider a local law to change the speed limit on South Street. Discussion?
Would the clerk like to read the posting for that?
Sure. The board request. Please take notice that a public hearing will be held before the Village of Pittsburgh Board of Trustees on Tuesday, January 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. at 21 North Main Street, Pittsburgh, New York, to consider the adoption of a proposed local law to amend Chapter 195 of the Village Code by amending Section 195-27.a to reduce the speed limit on South Street to 20 miles per hour from State Street to the southernmost boundary of the Village of Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Any discussion from the board?
No.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does anyone from the public wish to speak on the proposed change to the speed limit on South Street? Yes.
Go ahead. Hi, Elisa Plummer, 66 South Main Street. Why did you pick just South Street? How did that happen?
Because we're currently in the process of developing a traffic calming plan for South Street. It's a village street that, for a village street, has one of the worst speeding problems in the village. And we were going to 20 rather than 25. We wanted to see on an experimental basis how it works in concert with the other traffic calming measures that we're proposing. We also have a proposed bill in the state legislature to enact a 25-mile-per-hour village
And you're going to
speed.
give an update on that later on?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, you know, I'm just curious because I know this has been discussed for years actually. And the village owns a number and maintains a number of streets. And so pleased about, you know, South Street and that this is happening. But I'm wondering, you know, when Maple Street had issues with traffic speeding through from St. Louis and other side streets, these are all village owned and maintained streets. Why we wouldn't maybe go for a few more streets here? Because we're already looking at trying to do the entire village at 25. This is something that this board has control over with the streets that we own. So I would ask this board to consider really, you know, rather than experimenting, I get South because that's such a main thoroughfare, but all the side streets that have issues, and we've heard so much feedback from residents, I would think it would behoove the board to really expand this simply beyond South Street at this point. And it's also been identified in our traffic plan, transportation plan, and I was on that committee. So I just want to put that on the record. I think it's great, but I think we can do a heck of a lot more in terms of pedestrian safety and bicycle safety.
Well, one of the things that we are doing in working with the emergency services group and in some of the residents, we've asked and we've actually contracted with SRF to do sort of an area-wide for the immediate other traffic calming measures we're doing on Sutherland Street, Lincoln, Washington, Rand Place, and Maple. And I think
And Sutherland.
But do any of those studies, I'm sorry to interrupt, do any of those studies actually just preclude lowering the speed limit? Do
Well-
any, I mean, is there something that I'm missing? I'm telling you, I've looked at studies that have gone back decades, you know, where this has always been a recommendation, and you guys, it's within your authority and your purview, you know, to at least take a look at all these other streets that the village, you know, NISTOC doesn't have a say. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Each time we do this, we generally check with our traffic engineer because What we found is there are esoteric state regulations on New York traffic and highway law that we have to comply with. So each time we propose this, we vet everything with SRF. I imagine there will be some discussion with the other areas that we're looking at to also investigate if it's appropriate to go to a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit.
Well, as I recall, SRF has helped us all along the way with our transportation, active transportation plan. So I don't think there's any news, other than this is something we've all been trying to work towards. I'm just bringing this up because I think, this is something that's important to everybody who lives in the village.
And it's
It's
something-
not just the one street.
There are some other issues with it. One of the things in talking to SRF that you have to be careful, because if you have a patchwork of speed limits, it's difficult for enforcement. It can also create confusion and people not understanding which limit to follow. So we're trying to, it is somewhat of a methodical and a slower process, but we're trying to make sure we don't have any unanticipated consequences as we move forward implementing the active transportation plan. We'll talk more about it later on because we have a few other things on the agenda that will touch on the same subject. Thank you.
But to answer, also the reason South was sort of the first one that we started with, Frank proposed this solution. We were looking at Maple and South. There's some, as you know, the Maple Street neighbors have some big concerns, and we were looking at some other solutions. And this one is an immediate fix to help with that trouble spot. So while we figure the other things out.
Yeah, it's
Does
not that I
answer
don't
your
understand
question?
what
Yeah.
you're doing, I just think, this
Why
has been
didn't
a
we do
long
both?
time.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yes, Kendra.
Property owner at 21 Bowden, I would like to echo what Elisa said. I would love to see this extended when we talk about confusion for drivers. I've gone from South to Bowden. I used to stand out front for people running the stop sign when my kids were getting ready to get off the bus there. So I would love to see this extended throughout the village, and I think dropping one street to 20, even though it is the main thoroughfare, it will lead to some conclusion. I'd like to see that expanded. And my question is, the other question would be, how is it going to be enforced? Is the Monroe County Sheriff going to come? Are we going to have, those blinking lights? What's the enforcement plan for the speed limits change?
Generally, we would do both of those. We would probably have Monroe County. We have other traffic calming measures proposed for South Street that still are in the development phase. So we don't know what the final plan is. And what we found to be successful in traffic calming, you need to use every tool in the tool. Speed limits alone don't work. That's why we tried to use a comprehensive set of tools. Also, just a minor note, we need the name of your residence for our
Oh,
records.
sure, 66 Meadow Cove.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes.
Marcia Giles, 36 Jefferson Road East. And I agree with everybody, what everybody's saying here, and I'm not sure where that falls, Jefferson Road falls, that little section there, but because as you come around, I think it's East Terrace, there's a curve right there, and cars are going easy, 50, 60, past this house. And I'm wondering too, I think that needs to be corrected, and I'm not sure, I did see a policeman, and I know there's 2 Pittsburgh policemen. I said, you could sit in my driveway, because I'm afraid someone's gonna get killed.
I agree with you. That's probably the worst street in the village right there. And that's why we're proposing the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. We've had opposition along the way to do it, including some recent issues that we're still working on. But we have support from the town supervisor, Marge Burns, our representative in Albany, and Mike Pirro from the school district. So we're pushing as hard as we can to get that down. We also have other long-term plans that were in the active transportation plan because that corridor we know is probably the worst section of the village.
The challenge on that particular stretch of road is it's a state road. So we can't drop it the way Elisa's talking for all the other side streets. We just can't do it. So,
If you
but we
got it
can
to
push back.
30,
Well,
if you can get it to 30, that'd be
Right.
even good. I mean, it's supposed to be 30, but
It
it's
is
not.
very, yeah, right, yeah. I agree.
The
I'm right
bill
there.
in
So,
Albany right now is to allow us to lower it to 25, which is all we can do on state-owned roads right now, and that passed through the Senate, but not the Assembly, so it's just been reintroduced, and I have the language that says, except that in the village of Pittsburgh, town of Pittsburgh, speed limits may be established at not less than 25 miles per hour, so that'll allow us to lower it below that 30, which is what the guideline is right now. And that's the next thing on the agenda item that I think the
Lisa,
mayor
yeah.
So would the goal be that if I'm hearing this with the studies and you're working with a consultant and all that, the goal would be to either have throughout the entire village one speed limit of 20 on South Street, and then any other street would be 25? Is that the goal?
No. The goal right now is to have an area-wide, a village-wide speed limit of 25 miles per hour.
So South Street would go back up to 25?
No,
I'm just trying to understand
we really want to
the
see,
thought behind it.
we want to evaluate
Uh-huh.
whether the 20 mile per hour limit on South Street is successful. If it is, then I think we probably will implement it in other areas as well.
I mean, I don't know why you would do it on all the side streets.
Well, it's a good test case, you know.
It's been tough too. We have to roll out new signs on all of, on
Yeah,
every
oh,
single
sure,
street, so.
yeah.
And given all the opposition that we've, you know, on the path to implement all of these things, there's a reason we're going cautiously, because we're trying to also educate people as we move along, and it's a process. So I'll just say that. Yes?
Mike Goulet, I live at 7 Sutherland Street, and I've seen you out walking your dog, and we've discussed, people really do fly out there pretty fast. I was wondering if there's a possibility to incentivize the county sheriffs to be more involved. I mean, personally, I look at it as a cash cow. And if part of the traffic study would include, I don't know if they have automatic things that record, well, they do, they record your speed, but if there was a record that could be given to the appropriate authority and say, look, 100 cars went by this point, and X number were going this much over the posted speed limit, and because I'm sure they like the revenue, and if they see it as being, hey, look, we can go out and we can make some money and make the community safer. That ultimately, that's our goal.
We meet regularly with the sheriff's department. Renee is the liaison, and they generally will target an area. What we have been repeatedly told, and I don't know if there's an update, you can fill in, Renee. They're stretched for the resources, so we can get short-term enforcement, but it never seems to be adequate or long enough. And Mike, I was on your street a couple days ago with a dog, and these kids, I mean, they must have been going 60, barely slowed down at the stop sign at Lincoln, and just really gunned it up the street. So, obviously, Sutherland is another candidate for this. I expect if we implement it on South, that Sutherland has very similar conditions because it has long, straight stretches. For everybody here, one of the things we're looking at is putting another stop sign, three-way stop at the driveway to Sutherland High School, because that actually has the highest amount of flow there. There's also safety issues and visibility issues when school gets out and in the morning when there's a lot of traffic going in and out of that driveway. SRF is in the process of evaluating that right now and getting us a recommendation. I talked to Mike Pirro from the school district. They endorse the concept of it. Yes,
So
Mike?
just one more consideration is, in my travels around, I do see sheriffs, I would say a fair amount down, leaving the village after you go over the bridge where you turn and go to Sutherland Service. And sometimes they're having a conversation or something, but from an enforcement aspect, coming into the village, if you walk over that bridge, I mean, people, they're doing 50, 60 miles an hour flying in. And I know right at 75, where the proposed development is, I've seen a cop there once in the past 2.5 years that I've lived on Sutherland Street, but that would be a perfect place to have an officer and tag the people there, because it takes, unless you're hitting the brakes, and I don't know if our liaison with the police officers say, hey, you'd be more effective at this point here than really sitting down at that portion on Monroe Avenue, where I think the hazard to life and limb is a lot less. I mean, it's a 4-lane highway, your sidewalk's well off to the side, as opposed to flying over that bridge, coming up the end of Sutherland where the kids are going to get the bus, where I go to get the bus, where there's a crosswalk, and all that kind of stuff.
It's a problem all day, but on all the arterials, what really is amazing to me is, because I walk the dog in the evening, is people really speed in the evening. They can't during the day because there's usually congestion on most of the arterial streets, but at night they really do. Okay, any other comments? Yes, Lily?
Oh, Mike has one. Do you want to speak first, Mike?
Mike Reynolds, 35 Church Street. Just two things. I live on South Street. In the last 20 years, I can only think of one time when the speed of a car on South Street was a concern to me. And I don't think that driver cared what the speed limit was. The other thing is that normally when I pull out of my driveway, I don't see anybody either direction. There are times of day when there is some traffic, but most of the time, there's nobody in sight in either direction. Just a couple of observations.
I think the only thing I would say is that there is evidence at the curve, because there's a number of accidents that we've seen where at the intersection of Maple Street and South, cars have gone off the road and over the sidewalk. The worst speeding problem on South Street is actually that long straightaway stretch between the curb at Maple Street and the intersection with South Street. So they tend to slow down because there's usually a queuing line, because the light is the longest light in Monroe County, as we all know. But there really are some legitimate issues, and we've heard from residents up and down the street about that. Yes?
I just want to say that I live at 29 South Street, and I'm on the corner of Maple and South Street. Just today, Victoria was getting on the bus, and somebody passed the bus with the stop sign out as she was stepping on the bus, and they were speeding. So, just to put that on the record, I have seen plenty of people speeding on South Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I do more than anything is and I walk by there I walk to work that way. And I see nothing but speeding at all times of day on that street, so I hear you loud and clear.
One last thing.
Mike had another point.
I don't believe there's any village around here or municipality around here that has a 20-mile speed limit on a through street, except for school zones. Another thing to think of.
Traffic calming, what I would say, is an emerging science. There are New York State lags behind other areas of the country. The field really originated in Portland, Oregon. It's been promoted in certain areas in Florida, where actually in some of the Carolinas, many town centers have a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. So we're a little bit behind the times. Lily, you had a comment?
I did, and a question actually. So this is what I see as I'll call it a dilemma for right now. What we're hearing is that it might be confusing if we had one street in the village or several streets in the village that were 20 miles per hour and then a village-wide 25 miles per hour, that it would be confusing. So my question would be, would our constituents find it problematic to at least experiment with the one at 20, with the plan that it'll all be 25 and do it as an experimental move, or we can change our law this evening to read 25 miles per hour speed limit on South. We can do that because it's less constrictive, is that correct? So we could talk about that if that seems to be a path forward. Or might we consider doing the 20, and maybe there will be just one street in the village because it has very special circumstantial construction to it, because I think it followed the original Erie Canal bed, and that's why it's curving oddly, and that has that very problematic area at Maple and South.
Let me just add to that. The reason we picked 20 is the research that we've done as part of the active transportation plan with the consultants that worked on that project indicated to us that, and in the current thinking in the traffic engineering field, 20 miles per hour is really the appropriate speed for a walkable town center like we have here in the village. It is the goal that eventually we should get to. And in some, I've been mayor for 26 years, and I've slowly watched DOT creep along gradually adopting traffic calming standards as the understanding of the importance of it is. And if any of you have a chance to look at the active transportation plan, which is online, and near the front of that document, there's a really great graphic that shows you how as the speed increases, the severity of car pedestrian accidents increases geometrically. It's a curve that goes up like that.
After 30 miles per hour.
After 30 miles per hour, that's right,
So
that's
there's
right.
not, if you're hit by a driver going 20, you have a 90% chance of survival as a pedestrian. If that driver's going 30, you have a 50% chance. If they're going 40, you have a 10% chance of survival. And we know that most of the speeds, the 85th percentile on our streets around here, particularly the ones with the most pedestrian traffic, they're going 38 to 44 miles per hour. So, and that doesn't even account for if they're an older person or a super young person. That was looking at the average age, and then that new data doesn't even include SUVs and trucks, which
brings
hit
other
people
issues.
higher instead of at the legs like they used to.
So whether it's 20 or 25, it means slow down.
Yeah.
20, just remember the 2, and don't go above that. So whether it's 20 or 25, how confusing can it be?
I don't think it's confusing.
They shouldn't be
Well,
going
how
30.
makes it confusing when it's 20 or 25, really? I don't even think that's the issue. What I was just trying to express is that,
Why aren't we doing it on every
let's do it
instead
on all
of
the
just
streets
south?
that you as the trustees have control over.
Well,
I mean, you
let me
need
just
feedback.
explain there is another reason why I sort of held off on doing that, Elisa. In trying to get the village-wide limit in place, especially for the state roads, which we know have the worst traffic calming problem, DOT has pushed back and saying, well, we won't oppose it if it's only on village streets. And if we go to all 20, then they're gonna say, well, you're done, you don't need to do anything. And we're trying to make the case with DOT that we need it on the state
Have they
roads
given
too.
you that feedback that if you lowered on streets that are within your purview, they won't do anything on state-owned roads?
We have
I'm shocked by that.
gotten that suggestion, yes, we have.
I'm stunned.
So Lisa, one thing I do want to address, I completely hear you on why aren't we doing this village-wide. We have to talk about that, but obviously, I hate this answer because it's a procedural answer, and you know this, but this was advertised as an open meeting for specifically South.
Oh, no, I
And so,
understand that.
so,
I understand that.
yeah, I know you
It's
do, I
not
just
that I
want to make
don't.
sure everyone in the room,
It's just
yeah.
that to come up with only South Street, I just think it's an opportunity for us to give you more feedback.
Yep.
You know, because I did serve on the Active Transportation Plan Committee and was part of that research and working with the consultant. And the feedback has been consistent from the villagers. It's
Thank
never-
you.
Mike?
I'm sure the board realizes the problems on South Street, to be specific, and Sutherland Street, is those are the two main connecting village streets from Monroe Avenue to Jefferson. And I tried to research a little bit, what about things like speed bumps? It looks like most agencies don't like them. I think there's been some kickback from the emergency responders, but somebody wants to try to blow over a speed bump doing 45, they're gonna be paying at the repair shop. Is that a?
Part of the reason we wanted to try the 20 mile per hour speed limit, because we've been meeting for about a year with the Pittsburgh Emergency Services Group and vetting different concepts that, because both Sutherland Street and South Street are primary routes for them, they were very concerned that the impact that things like speed humps might have on their ability to move as they need to through there. So we've tried to come up with suggestions that they can live with that will be effective. And one of the things they don't object to is a lower speed limit because it doesn't impact them.
How are they working on Boughton?
Well-
Speed humps, how did they work out?
I
mean,
think
you
there's,
guys put in speed humps on Boughton. Was that successful, or?
I'll let Frank answer that since you live on Boughton, Frank.
Speed humps, the speed humps work, but they're not that effective.
Mhm.
And and we can only use them for so many months out of the year. They harm the road, so we have a lot of problems with them. And one of our trustees, I think it was UNA, that sent us a report from the town of Brighton that said that speed humps do some damage to these emergency vehicles. If they keep going over them, they are really harmful.
So it wasn't as effective?
Yeah, so speed humps have been effective for the 5 or 6 months that we have them, but it's, in the long run, you have people going around them, you have people driving over them fast anyway, so they're not that effective. My view is we're talking about all these measures we can take, but one of the measures that we have to take is to educate the public that they cannot drive recklessly in the village. And I don't think we've been that effective in trying to educate the public. And that's something that we're gonna have to look at, because you can put speed humps, you can do anything you wanna do. But if the public doesn't wanna slow down, they're not gonna slow down.
The other thing I would say is with Boughton Avenue, one of the things that I think has proven fairly effective on that street is alternating the parking back and forth from side to side. We investigated the feasibility of doing that on South Street, and that was nixed by the Emergency Services Group because they want 22, I think it's 22 feet clear, so we don't have that opportunity there. But that does, of all the things that we've implemented on South Street, I think the alternating traffic has been probably among the most effective. Yes, I saw a hand over here.
I gotta go back to educating the public, and I think then the only way to educate the public is you need to talk to the police department and have them more engaged, because that is the only, if you're not gonna do anything else, and that to me is the only solution, that you have them out there every day, and people will slow down if they get tickets, because they're gonna know if they come into the village, they're gonna get a ticket.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Deb Metz, 47 Rand, I'm on the Rand extension.
Mhm.
2 comments. One, I think the speed bumps do help to educate. Although the speed bumps are only there through the warm weather, what I see is that in the winter when it's not there, people have been trained. So the speed has come down for the time preceding the
So
bumps
there's a
being there.
residual effect.
There is.
Good to know.
You know,
Mhm.
people we're taught. The second comment is, I agree, I think, Lily, part of what you were saying. It seems to me that if we are going to experiment with one particular street within the village, it should be what we're looking to hopefully expand across. You know, I grew up in a village, so I have the village mentality. Obviously, I've lived here almost 20 years. And it just seems to me that if we have an experiment and it works well, then to turn to everyone and say, well, now we're going to experiment, we're going to have something that's 5 miles higher throughout the rest of the village, you lose the ability again to educate people. If people get into the mindset that the village speed limit is X, whatever that is, consistency will help with educating.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if there are no more comments, I would make a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the board. I'd like to consider the 25 mile per hour. What does everybody think about that? 20 or 25?
For consistency?
For consistency, right. I think it's a good point.
Frank, you proposed the 20 miles per hour, so not to put you on the spot, how do you feel about that? About going to 25 instead of 20?
I'm still in favor of lowering South Street to 20 miles per hour. Yes, I was the one that actually brought up the motion, yeah.
Renee, what do you think?
I'm torn, because we know 20 is plenty, and,
Mhm.
but I don't think we're not gonna be able to go to 20 miles per hour. The state's not gonna allow us
No.
to do a village-wide
Not yet.
20 miles per hour there, we're not there yet. They will allow us to go to 25, so I totally hear what everyone's saying about the consistency of
Mhm.
25, yet, you know, that everywhere the 20 is plenty is showing some great impact. And I agree, we have to have enforcement, that's a big piece of this. There's not a silver bullet for this, we need multiple things to happen. So I'm a little torn, because I would like to see, you know, if we put 20 there, it means probably people are gonna drive 30.
Mhm.
If we put 25 there, they're gonna go 35. So I understand the consistency part of it, but I'm torn. I'm kind of leaning with Frank to leaving it at 20 so we could try it out.
Mhm. Dan, what do you think?
Slower the better.
Slower the better. Lily, what do you think?
I understand the challenges on South, and I think like, when you're considering things for variances, you will say, well, this is a very special situation for this particular area, and so that it would require a variance or a variation from the rest of the village. I don't particularly see a harm in trying the 20 mile per hour
Mhm.
speed limit as an experiment. I don't think it would be terribly confusing. I don't know how many people would even notice if then eventually the whole village was 25 and it became consistent with the rest of the village. But for this particular experiment, I think it's only 5 miles per hour difference. I think to go ahead and try to do the 20, and then when it's village-wide, it will blend in with the rest of the village.
I think that's okay, because I think, to address Elisa's point earlier, I think in all likelihood, we're gonna make other changes, and if this is successful, then we're gonna put it in other places that we know are a problem. So I think that's, I guess I agree with everybody else.
Eventually, the goal is though to be consistent village-wide.
But what we do wanna do is we do wanna get some speed recording equipment out there to see what effect it has. That's something we're gonna talk to SRF about.
Yeah, Zach was also, he had some information, right, about the machine, when we could use it, when we can't, we had one that needed a battery or something, right?
Yes, we have one that does work that we can't put on our roads without having to get a permit from the New York State DOT. It's not solar powered, it is powered by a battery, which we have 2 of them, we can keep them charged, so I don't see where there'd be.
That should be a big deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
collapse.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Bob, I think you have to vote on your motion to close the public
Oh,
hearing.
thank you. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
You did.
Do we have a second? Did I have a second?
Lily?
Yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass it to 20.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's all right. You beat me. Dan?
Aye.
Lily?
Aye.
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 Renee? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I hope that addresses your concerns as well, for the consistency, but
I understand why you're looking to do what I would hope that in the end there is consistency.
and I'm looking at 2 little babies in here that cross that street, and that sort of drives the train too. And that's right where they're crossing, and it's so dangerous right there, and that's really what was driving most of it.
I think the important thing is we look to make sure that what is the effect of this? If there are any unanticipated consequences that are negative, we'll make a quick change, but we're certainly gonna watch it carefully.
And that's not the only thing being looked at to sort of calm that area either. It's just one of the measures. So hopefully as we finish studying the area, there'll be some other things that will complement the 20 mile per hour limit. So it's a bigger experiment than just the speed limit.
Were you watching the cut-throughs, right? Because people get off of South now to avoid the light and they drive right down Bowden or they cut up Maple. Will that be part of what's being studied during this process? Because I think how many more cars are going, if they increase their speed because they're frustrated drivers or whatnot, will those be part of the
That's
study?
exactly why we did an area-wide rather than just South Street in isolation, and this was done at the request of the Emergency Services Group. I think the other thing too that we're gonna take a look at too is we know that traffic patterns are gonna change. Today we heard, Renee and I attended a meeting with DOT. that the schedule for the closure of the State Street Bridge is going to be at least 6 months. It may be more than 6 months, they don't know yet. So there will be a shift in traffic patterns and probably more cut-through traffic. So that's something that we're also trying to grapple with and understand so we can deal with it. Okay?
That won't happen until 2021 though.
Yeah, not this
Got a
year,
little time.
not this year.
Yeah. Still
Okay,
believe this.
next item, I just wanted to give, oh, I'm sorry, I told John Limbeck he wanted to address the board, and I will extend him that courtesy.
Good evening. John Limbeck, 62 State Street, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the board tonight. And I'd like to acknowledge Dorothea and the mayor for getting me on as quickly as they did. What I'd like to do tonight is just remind the board that we've had an ad hoc committee on State Street for almost 6 years now. And we took this into our own hands because of the speed on State Street. And I won't discount anybody else's claim that their street is busy, but we've had probably 3 to 4 times a year, we've had the county come out and measure speed. The average is 45 to 55. And the last time the sheriffs were there, every ticket they wrote for an hour was over 55 miles an hour. What aggravates our situation is the amount of commercial traffic that we have on
Do
State
you
Street.
have any, John, and I ask this because Renee and I are gonna have a meeting with DOT, and do you have any documentation on the 50, that would be helpful. just
No,
to
we,
do-
what it done, I talk with Mike Favada 2-3 times a month, and he'll try to get somebody
Okay.
out there.
Yeah,
I've heard everybody talk about, get the sheriffs there. They don't have the resources.
Right.
Mike has tried his damnedest to get people out there, and if they've got an hour every 2 weeks, that's a lot. But some of the things that we've run into, aside from the commercial traffic, all night long, you've got the tractor trailers coming into the village, downshifting and using Jake brakes, coming down from 55 miles an hour. Then they hit the potholes, so you hear everything that goes by. We spoke with Dave Gehring out of DOT on 2 occasions before he left, and his points were very disturbing to us because he told us that State Street from Mitchell Road to the canal is not a residential neighborhood. And I don't know if that was an official policy or just his opinion.
well, he's gone now.
Well,
Yeah,
thank God for
It's
that.
because it's an arterial street, and I live on Monroe, so I'm in a similar boat to you, and they treat all arterial roads the same regardless of the context right now, which is one of the things we're trying to convince them to change. But
He also told us that there was no municipal interest in doing anything on State Street. And again, his opinion.
Not true.
And finally, he told us that there were no discretionary or emergency funds available to implement anything on State Street because they had greater needs elsewhere. So, that was pretty much our experience with DOT. As you know, we've met with a lot of the village officials over the year. And we really haven't been able to get anything from the village because you guys have your own budgetary things. We couldn't put a crosswalk in because it's a state highway. There's different things that, I think the village would like to do, but they just don't have the opportunity to do
Can I
it.
give you a quick
Sure.
update? Because we had a meeting today and we actually talked about State Street because of the bridge. One of the things that Renee and I were arguing for, and Renee, feel free to jump in here if I forget something, is they're putting a new railing on the bridge, so the sidewalk is going to decrease in width by a foot. Right now it's 7 feet, and it will go to 6 feet. Right now, the lanes are striped to 11. We asked them to go to 10. We asked them to restore the crosswalk at South and at State Street and Shane Place, so we can have a yield sign in the center. We also have asked them to put a crosswalk at Durham Way, which would be very close to the line, so we could put a yield sign there. 2 of them would slow down, because you'd have a sign in the middle of the road and a crosswalk. That should give some traffic calming relief. They're supposed to study that. We have more meetings scheduled with them because they're still developing the schedule for the repaving of Route 31, and we're going to pursue all of these. There's other things that aren't relevant to you that we're also pursuing involved in those repaving projects, but we know that we're hoping this is an opportunity to get some of the things that we talked about getting them to do before done as part of this paving project. including better pedestrian lighting on the
If we
bridge.
could convince DOT to take it down to the brick that we see in the winter in those potholes, that would solve the
I
problem.
don't disagree with you. We also spoke at length with the town, and they don't have the capacity to help us because it's not their jurisdiction. The light that was put in at Mitchell Road, that has provided gaps in the traffic,
Mhm.
but it hasn't slowed anybody down. And probably the most disappointing thing to us is when we contacted Rich Funky, his staff told us that we weren't important enough for him to talk to, and they have never returned one of our telephone calls. And that's happened, I've talked with them on 4 different occasions since last April.
Well,
So-
he's not running again, so hopefully.
Well, you know, he's still a representative,
Fair
you know? And while I don't discount the activities that the village is trying to implement, I don't think that the traffic calming that we're gonna do on the internal village streets is gonna work on State Street. Obviously, we can't cut that speed limit. I can't even get the DOT to move the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign that people see from the bridge as they're heading out State Street.
Nor I.
And so again, I don't want to say that we've got a special circumstance, but it's really disheartening for the amount of money that people have put into their homes to not be able to enjoy it.
Mhm.
As the village and the town have gone through their traffic calming, they've talked about walkability and bikeability, and I've kept trying to introduce livability. You know, I live on a very busy street. I pay extra insurance because I live on a state highway, and it's just really disheartening that, you know, we can't enjoy our property. With the work that's gonna be going on State Street, I'm asking that if the village would consider a couple of more measures, I'd like to throttle the lanes down on State Street, especially as you come in from that eastern entrance. Those lanes are super wide, and you've got at least 10 to 15 feet of side road there that, you know.
We spoke about that today.
Okay.
Yep.
The other thing that I'd like to see is some sort of median on the eastern entrance into State Street, similar to what we have as you come in East Avenue on North Main. You've got that planted section, and I think if you cut down the width of the lanes and we had a physical barrier there, that would really help slow down the traffic going in both directions. And I think, I'd really like to get DOT off of the thought that that is not a residential neighborhood. Because if you look at the homes at the Highlands, you've got Wood Creek, and you've got all the homes in and off of State Street, that, to me, that constitutes a residential
What are
neighborhood.
they basing that on, John?
But again, this was just,
Graph or
this was
something?
talking with Dave Garrett. So,
That's their bureaucratic designation, but I think most village residents live on arterial streets.
yeah.
And it's very similar to the situation you described on East Jefferson Road on State Street. It's a long-term goal. The other thing I would suggest, just as a aside, if you go to Saratoga Springs, if you come in on Route 9 from the south, they have an excellent example of how an effective, a median can temper the speed going into the city there.
I'm borrowing that to make the village right-of-way green on either side, slightly wider, and have large
Sure.
trees.
And eliminate the shoulders, because the shoulders convey visual width to the driver and speed.
And I think this is just the opportune time with the work that they're planning there, and if we had municipal support for this, I think it may sway DOT. So that was my plea to the village tonight.
All those things are in the active transportation plan, which when adopted will become our official plan. So we'll do what we can, John. Thank you.
Okay.
They're also
Thank
gonna be repaving, 31, when are they doing that? Does anyone remember that from
I
that
don't
public
remember
hearing?
where that falls on the schedule, but
It's
I
like
think it's
I mean, it's after the bridge.
after the
project.
bridge.
I hope they close the bridge for a year.
Well, it'll be at least 6 months or more, we know that. Okay.
That'll
Thank you.
change traffic patterns a little bit, people's habits, I think.
Thanks again.
John, when did they do just so I can ask for the crash reports that you were talking about, the speeding?
We've had
When
them
was that?
intermittent.
Like, should I ask for the last 5 years or when?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we've had some, Zach has set some up,
Okay.
Mike has set some up, you know, I
Okay.
don't think there was any regularity to it, it's just when they could, so.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Okay, next item, I just wanted to give a brief, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yes.
I just wanted to add, just because you said a couple things there. which is, you know, the 55 miles an hour. I know he's talking State Street, I'm gonna still talk about East Jefferson, because I am right there, and it is 55, 60, so I'm sure you can get the same people that are going that fast on that street as well. And if the traffic pattern is going to change when they close that bridge down, what I would be concerned about, again, like there's, the school that's right there on the corner, what is it?
Jefferson Road.
Jefferson Road School.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, the kids are crossing there, then they're riding their bikes down on that road. If it's, you know, so when we talk about the plan to change for 31, this all, you know, the other pieces have to also be considered, because there's gonna be a lot of kids. I just worry someone's gonna get hit.
Yeah.
We-
I hear them at night going 55 Wegmans, I've seen them go
Yeah.
55 down my road.
Something he brought up about the big trucks, I know that Skinny Atlas had, success, it took them a while, but
Did they finally get success? They have
I
a,
think they did. Do we have is there anything within our power that we can do to disallow those big 18-wheeler or whatever? There's some kind of weight limit on those big trucks that Skinny Atlas put.
do you know what they did in Stennis, or?
No, but I can look it up. Does anyone else know this? Okay, this doesn't
I
sound
mean,
right.
careful, you're not venturing businesses by doing that.
I know.
Here's what I think.
You have a problem keeping business in some ways here as it is.
Yeah, it wouldn't allow, not the delivery vehicles that like bring things to Village Bakery and to things like that, but those super big, giant things that drive through at night, and I hear them too, they wake me up at night because I'm on the main road, so I know what everyone's talking about, but, I'll look it up, I'll bring it up.
I think I know what they did.
Yeah.
They actually put signs on 90 and 81, telling people not to cut through Skinny Atlas. But I think,
I mean, they actually have some legislation about what trucks can go, what type
Oh,
of,
really?
a limit on those super giant,
well, this must be recent then.
those like double
Okay.
tractor things that go through. Okay, no one knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, I'm
I'm
certainly
gonna
want to
look it
learn.
up,
Yeah, because if they,
But I hear what you're saying too, it's a balance, so.
It's not, even if they can still go through, but maybe not at 50.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's,
slow
you
them
know,
down.
if we can fix that, then that's a different story.
yeah.
yes, Mike?
Something I want to say is, I think I heard the mention of traffic calming, like making the lanes smaller and also making the shoulders smaller. For me as a bike rider, that's like a freaking death sentence. I can see where it's a problem because drivers are like, hey, that's a whole nother lane. But to limit the shoulders, I want a nice big shoulder to get as far over as I can. And where there are roads that don't have shoulders, it's not in the village, but I was actually, I think it's 2 years ago, going down French Road from a friend's house up to get on the canal path, there is no shoulder, and I was side to it. I mean, the mirror of the car hit me, didn't take me out or take me down, but they didn't stop or anything, and there's absolutely no shoulder there.
I can respond to that. In most situations, and they're actually, we were talking about that today in regards to State Street, they're not gonna move the curb line or the shoulder line. But what is effective is in some places in the village, we've had lane widths as high as 14 feet. And we've tried to get them, the standard in urban areas currently is about 10 feet. There are some cities that are now going to 9 feet because it's helpful in slowing down the cars. And what that does on State Street right now, I think it's 11-foot lanes, if I remember correctly.
12, I don't know.
It's either 11 or 12, but we're trying to get them to go to 10 because that will allow for a full width bike lane, and that is.
5 feet, and you need 5 feet for a legal bike lane.
Correct.
And I heard them talking today at the DOT meeting, they did say that they need 5 feet on that State Street bridge, and we have enough room for that, even if we go down to 10 feet, I believe they're gonna measure, but.
Would they be marked for biking?
They didn't say that, but I think if we can get the space, what we learned through that East Ave, bike lane, discussion, what if we could have, they were open to giving us bike lanes, they just couldn't get the space because they weren't willing to concede that lanes, or in the middle, that turning lane to make it narrower. So I think if we can get the 5 feet, they can paint it and make it a lane.
Now, will that affect emergency services over?
No, they don't mind paint.
They don't care
Because they
about
can drive their
striping.
trucks wherever they want.
They're most concerned about three-dimensional obstacles, but not striping.
So that's an easier sell than a median.
On Friday, I met with Marge Burns, our assembly person in Albany, who's introducing the legislation for a 25 mile per hour village-wide speed limit. Everything seems to be a go, except there's again new resistance from DOT on doing it on the state roads. They were concerned about rear-end collisions. Really, the remedy to that, which was spelled out in the active transportation plan, was having transition zones on the borders of the village. So instead of going from 45 to 25, you have a transition zone where you go from 45 to 35, then to 20. So there's a series of cues, so to give the drivers, visual cues to slow down. So we have another meeting that's going to be scheduled. I have to open my calendar to tell you when it is, but that is moving forward. I guess that's all I have on that. Any other comments on that? No? Okay, let's move ahead. Next item we have is a discussion on the issue of Airbnbs and VRBOs. Dan, do you want to introduce that?
Well, I did by email, and you guys all told me that this was Lily's issue and she was gonna run with it, so.
Okay, Lily,
The only reason was that when we were doing the code update, early on, it came up. And so I had done some research and I brought at that time forward to the board a folder that was provided to me by a member of the comprehensive plan because it was something that they were looking at as well. So with further research, I discovered that around the time we were discussing it, that the town of Victor had just passed what they are calling a short-term rental ordinance. And it's included in your packet. And I think it's something that we should at least read and discuss. If you haven't had a chance to read it, we can discuss it at another meeting. But it lays out pretty much some of the discussion of areas of concern that are perking up nationally regarding Airbnbs.
So,
Presently, I think we have 2 that I am aware of in the village. So I think discussion might be whether we would grandfather those, I don't know how that would work. But I think some more talking with Steve might help guide us through a little bit. The existing ordinance from Victor, would we need to tailor it in any way to fit
Well, what I
the
did,
village?
I changed it, I got the one from Victor and I got a couple others, I modified the one from Victor to fit our code, there's still some tweaking needs to be done, I think it bears further discussion, because some of it's, I think, a little restrictive,
Okay.
Yes.
because I think, you have a property and especially an empty nester, you know what I mean, there's an opportunity to make a little money on an extra room, I think that's a good thing. When people are retiring later and don't have the same retirement funds, I think if you have an opportunity to make a little extra money, I think that's a good thing. Regulating it, very important. The option or making sure that the homeowner is present during all Airbnb rentals is imperative.
I don't agree on that. I'm sorry, I wanna let you finish.
Not VRBOs, I think if you rent a whole place, you know what I mean, say for the golf tournament, things like that, you wanna rent out your house completely to somebody? No, you can't be there, they don't, family wants to come and take that house for that time, they don't want an owner there. But in Airbnb, because I've been in both situations where I rented an Airbnb in a place and there were other people in that same house with no owner there, it was a zoo. All right, I've rented where the owner was there, perfect situation, the rent was great, the place was clean, it was an adult, comfortable situation, so,
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people are going to the owner, that is kind of one of the common things I've seen in some of the regulations, that they're wanting the owner to be present during a single room occupation.
Steve, I hear you. A couple of things I want to point out. One is that for the purposes of this discussion, I'd like to use Airbnb and VRBO interchangeably. So whether you're renting a room or a house, it doesn't really matter for the purposes of this. You can rent a room from Airbnb, you can rent a whole house from Airbnb, you can rent a room from VRBO, you can rent a whole house from VRBO. So let's keep that sort of all the same. I'd like to go a little further in what you were saying on retirees. It's everybody rents these things. It is their asset that they own, and as long as they stay within the rules, they are entitled to make a buck off of it in America. And so this is working all over the country. This is working all over the world. The language in this is very negative, and there's a very positive side of this story as well. So not only, and I don't mean to just address you, not only are retirees able to make an extra buck. You go on vacation and you want to rent out your house. If there's a big golf tournament at Oak Hill and you want to rent out your house for that week, parents' weekend, you want to rent out your house for that week, that's entirely up to you. The other thing, you could also argue that it gives visitors to our village a genuine experience of what it's like to live here. They're not all party houses in the same way that a hotel is not all a party room. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to address. That this was confusing to me because we got it and it's got Village of Pittsford on the top as if this were a law that we were going to pass. And it's got some really negative language in it. The village board finds that unhosted short-term rentals threaten the residential character and quality of life of the neighborhoods where such uses exist because they tend to attract excessive noise, disorderly conduct, the accumulation of refuse and other nuisances. That is a sweeping generalization that only chooses the worst case example of these things. I'm renting one in Paris in a beautiful neighborhood, and none of that is applicable. So I feel very strongly that we should not restrict our residents' ability if they want to turn their house into something that is within the rules and the guidelines. They should be allowed to make a buck on the asset that they own.
I think the key phrase that you just used is within the guidelines that we're trying to establish.
I was talking specifically about the Airbnb and VRBO
Right.
guidelines, because that's not our guidelines, the guidelines of those companies, because those weed out all as much as possible. This is a legal thing that's happening all over the country and all over the world.
And they're also experiencing problems with it all over.
And they're also experiencing great success with them all over the country and all over the world.
I would say that some of the language, certainly we can adjust if it's offensive to you. But the short-term rental, the concept, I think that this is trying to convey is that in the interest of the residents who have spent their life and their life savings on their homes, and they want to maintain the value in their homes, which might be affected by, let's say, somebody from another country buying the house next door, not living there, but buying it as an investment and just keeping it, turning it over as a VRBO. What we're saying is, yes, you may do short-term rentals, but you have to live in the house. You don't have to be there while your renters are there, but you need to live in the house most of the time.
But that's not what this says.
Oh, I think it does.
No, it says hosted means the on-site presence of the owner at the property during the duration of the rental period, which means the owner has to physically be in the home while it's being rented.
I think it's an oversight. I can understand that.
That's not the same thing as it's their primary residence. We had talked about this before, that might be a pretty good compromise. It's their primary residence. It's not a
Right.
money-making
I agree
venture
with that.
purely. So those are two very different things.
Yeah, that's why I said, I only did this as a basic to start a discussion. I mean, the language I didn't go through and weed out because that's, you know, I don't.
I think to be productive here tonight, and I just wanted to share, I got an email this afternoon from Justin, and he brought up a very good point, that this, whatever draft we eventually, if we do adopt something.
Which Justin?
Leestra. Should be formatted parallel to the construction of the new code sections that we've adopted. So we'll probably have to reform, if we go ahead with this, we'll have to reformat it. What I would suggest, rather than, because I think this is very preliminary, it's a good thought starter that we should all sort of take a read through it,
Yes.
mark it up with notes, so at our next meeting, we can have a more informed discussion about what we think will work and what shouldn't work.
Okay, I thought that's what this was, because it's in the meeting packet for today, so I've got notes ready.
Just purely to start it, so
Okay.
everybody can peruse it, go through it, make their own, changes, and then come back and.
Okay, the other big thing I want to insist on is that we talk to the villagers about this, because we have literally no data on this. We don't know what the villagers want or don't want. And it wasn't part of the survey. Is Bill McBride here? I saw Bill McBride running around. I don't think it was one of the survey
I don't believe
questions.
it was.
Yeah, so at some point, we have to find out what people want. Just our anecdotal evidence doesn't mean anything.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right.
Do we have a conference call at 8?
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
Is it 8 o'clock? I'm sorry, I don't have my cell phone on the table.
It is 8 o'clock exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have to convene, we have a brief attorney-client session. We're going to convene in the other room. You are all welcome to stay here. I'll make a motion to enter attorney-client session. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Next item we have is an update on the proposal to get a crossing guard at the intersection of Maple Street and South Street. You wanna?
Yep.
Okay. go
The
ahead.
board requested that I speak to our new parking monitor. Unfortunately, Mike is unable to do that. The hours conflict with his childcare. He takes his daughter to school and picks her up. So that is not gonna work. That is not gonna be a quick fix. Zach is able to obtain the equipment necessary. I just don't have anybody to outfit it in. So I guess the question to the board is, do we want to look to hire out for that position, or what would we like to do? I need further instruction.
The town pays about $10,000 a year for their crossing guard.
And Jefferson and
Yeah.
South.
Yeah, they have two, that might have been, no, that's right. And so that's the number, the estimate we have from the town. And they said we could go on there with their contracting, the same contracting service that they use, but I'm not sure we're there yet. I'm more in favor of getting those stop signs there than,
And the other thing I would say, we're at the beginning of our budget season, and
Yeah.
that's an unanticipated expense.
yep, it is.
So I think the responsible thing would be, let's get the budget season started, see where we are with other traffic calming measures, and then find out where we end up. Because I think by the time we get to the end of the budget season, we'll probably have a solution for the traffic calming selected.
Because all of these things are being considered for the same concern.
Right.
Part of which we've adjusted the speed limit, that won't solve it alone. Okay, so we're holding for now?
Okay?
Yeah.
Basically, table it for.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yep.
sound like it will be difficult. If we wanted to do that, it wouldn't take much time to do that. We don't have the money.
Okay, next item we have is Steve is going to report on the issue at what I was previously talking about in attorney-client session of the unsafe conditions at the Village Green retention pond.
Oh, it's way above level and it needs to be dealt with. The problem is who's responsible and where do we don't really, you can't go on that property to figure out the pipe, and apparently somebody crushed the pipe, the outflow at one point, which is now impeding it, and that pond is way high, and to me, it's a safety issue.
The parking lot at Village Green was flooded today.
Yeah.
Is the pond itself, is it fenced in any way, or is the property
It
fenced?
is not, it does not have any protection or barriers on it, and it's very large and very deep.
Why is this our problem?
It's in our municipality. That's what I'm saying, I don't know.
Is this a
who's-
private property issue?
Yes, but whose? That's the issue.
Well, that's not, I mean,
Where's the responsibility and who would I go after? in
It's
order to
even
get-
more complicated because the bulk of the pond itself is in the town of Pittsford. The properties come, the railroad is like this, and Village Green is like that, and the pond is in here, which
But
is
it's
most.
not town property though,
No,
it's
it's-
privately owned property
It's
within.
outside the municipal boundary of the village.
Oh,
Do you have a building code way to address this issue? Is this a,
I would say, yeah, I would say I can find a code that would address the safety issue of
that I
it.
think you have to talk to, and where is the safety issue? Is it on Pittsford Village Green?
Pardon?
Isn't the safety issue on Pittsford Village Green?
I would say yes,
Then isn't that the property owner you would address with your,
but is that pond owned by them, or is it by CSX, or is?
It's owned by Village Green. It
Right,
is Village
and
Green's
the other problem which makes it difficult is the fact that apparently when they were doing the work on 75 Monroe, they pinched the pipe.
well,
So,
but that's not the issue.
well,
more
yes, because
complicated.
the only way to alleviate the pond is to fix the pipe.
But you have a problem on a property in the village that you feel comes within the purview of the building code and the safety, and New York State Fire Prevention and Building Code.
Mhm.
You need to address it with the property owner.
Okay,
How they solve it is their problem, not ours.
okay.
I mean, that would be my thought.
No, that's fine,
I
that's
mean,
why
I
that's why I
understand.
brought up here, for you to.
It's much more complicated than we're making it, but we can't go getting involved in property disputes between adjoining property owners where there's a problem.
Okay. All
At
right.
least that's my thought, I don't know how the board feels about it, but from a legal perspective, that would be like us interfering in a tree dispute between two property owners.
Right.
Just out of curiosity, is it, do you know, anybody know, is the Village Green, are the buildings individually owned, is the whole,
It's individually owned, they're condominiums, but there's a homeowners association.
all right, then I will go to
The only building that's not in a homeowners association is the building right on Monroe Ave.
the front one, yeah, okay.
Okay, all right. I think we pretty much covered the issues with the DOT bridge, Renee, do you think? I think we can just move past that. Stormwater report?
Right, well, the issue with the stormwaters, we have our, annual requirement to re-sign up with the coalition. That we're actually past due on when it was supposed to be presented. There's a resolution there, and then also we need an authorization. There is a $2,500 fee associated with our membership to the coalition.
It's more than that, isn't it? Is there an add-on, small add-on?
I don't,
Yeah, there is a small add-on, it's in the
yeah, I
contract.
might be $100 and something out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's in that packet, I don't have the whole packet with me. I know every municipality has some little add-on to it. But all the fee schedule is on one of the pages of the thing that was handed to
It
you.
is.
It all seemed reasonable to me. My only question is, did anything change from the last time we signed
No.
this?
As far as I know, no, nothing has changed.
Village of Pittsford is a total of $2,687. It's an adjoining fee of $2,500 with a supplemental fee of $187.
I'm sorry, Jeff, finish.
Total 2,687, sorry.
My other question on this is the signatory line on it is Cheryl
Yeah.
Donofo, who's not in office anymore. Do we get a new copy of this?
We'll just sign
That
it.
was one that just sent to us in December.
Right, yeah, and as
So
of
now it'll
January
be
first.
Annabelle.
Yeah,
But they'll get the right person to sign it. We'll sign ours,
okay.
and then they'll just be up, it'll be up to them to get the right person to sign it. We don't worry about it.
Would someone like to make a motion to authorize the intermunicipal agreement with the Monroe County Stormwater Coalition?
I think what the motion would be to pass resolution 1, Dorothea, is that the motion? It's in front of you now, resolution 1.
Yep, so moved, do I have a second?
okay.
Dan?
Aye.
Lily?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
I love that Dan gets to go first.
Yeah, kind of fun.
You're in the sick ward, you do a lot of things down there, that's great.
Okay, I
You're
think,
both sick?
But we're perky.
Oh, I didn't know you were sick.
That's why we put you together, you can cough over there.
okay, I think we can skip
I'm really
past
sick,
8
but it's
to
coming.
member items, and we'll start with,
Why are we skipping past 8?
because we just said in the other room that we were just going to reschedule our meeting for a work session to plan it.
Oh, okay. That's what that Saturday session was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought the Saturday session was something else.
okay.
But we do still intend to do this.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course, of course. Trustee Lanfair?
Okay. Four Corners Christmas tree. I have a question, and you're probably the only one who can answer it.
Okay.
And that is the piece of property where we put the Christmas tree up every year,
Mhm.
that we pay, is it about $350 or $400 for the tree each year?
About
Could be
300.
about that, right, Zach? So my thought was, since we own that piece of property,
Could we plant a tree?
could we plant a tree instead of paying $300 every year? And eventually we'll have this magnificent tree and it'll be free.
I've often thought the same thing, because eventually the tree would get bigger and it would be a more impressive Christmas tree.
Yes.
We did that out front.
We did, right.
The only,
Go ahead.
the only thing I wonder is, what about the fountain issue?
Well, I have thought about that, and I thought optimally, the fountain should be where the tree is, but the tree would be just as visible if it was in the other corner towards Rachel's.
So what does the board think?
I think it's a great idea. I think we should plant a tree.
All right, should we ask Mike or talk to Mike and warn Mike or?
I'll talk to Mike
Okay.
and explain to him what we're doing. The only other caveat is the snow storage from that parking lot
Comes
goes,
up a little bit there.
so we'll have to consider that. And also get a evergreen tree species that is less salt susceptible, because that would be an issue there.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Any other items?
Well, I have one for the building inspector, but that can wait for his report.
Oh, okay, my one issue is the garbage. I've had a couple people ask me about garbage districts. The town, village residents are eligible to form a garbage district in the town's program if more than 50% of the residents would like to be part of the town's bid garbage service. It would eliminate multiple trucks in a neighborhood.
Do you mean village-wide, or do you mean like a section of the village?
Well, you could have a neighborhood.
That's what I mean. Is it a neighborhood?
It wouldn't have to be village-wide, or it could. The question I have for you is, I think about 10 years ago, when Tim Galley was on the board, we did a survey and polled people whether they would like a garbage district. And at that time, the response was no, we would. We had information, we did research, and we indicated there would probably be about a 25% individual resident savings if you went to a bid garbage service for the village versus individual haulers. We did a village-wide survey sent to every residence in the village, and at that time, there was a clear majority that wanted to keep choice. It's been 10 years. We didn't put it in the survey last spring, but the question that was asked of me, is it time to poll people again and see if they would prefer to have a village garbage district, or suggest that they don't, join the town's program. Enrollment in the towns, I believe it's open, I think it's till a date in April. It was just in a recent town
Okay.
newsletter.
Now, I think the village clerk had an opinion about the district. And the question was something about collecting the fees, because somebody suggested that it should call part of our taxes, but if there was a problem with the pickup, they were calling Village Hall. I think when we talked about it once before, that was the question. Would people automatically think, since it comes through the village, that if they have an issue with their
Right.
trash being picked up, that they're calling Village Hall to ask about it?
I guess is the village itself conducting the picking up? If we're not, and we're contracting out, are they dealing with a contractor, or are they dealing with, because we pay the bill? Who's gonna be on the
We're not
service?
having any, my understanding is the village would have nothing to do with it. This would be a town-operated district. Isn't that right, Bob?
Well, right now, the town is setting up districts for this. I believe under the town system, I'm not sure, I guess I'll have to check
Yeah,
again.
because it's who they're paying, because typically when you're gonna have a complaint, you're gonna call who you're paying. And if the village is running the district, are we paying the hauler, or are they paying the hauler individually?
I think they're paying the hauler individually. I believe that's how it works.
Okay,
I thought the original intent was that the town, deals with two issues. I thought the town was doing a survey in the village to see what interest there was, and they didn't ever do that?
I think the town has sort of left it up to the initiative of neighborhoods. They publicized it so that people are aware of the opportunity. But I think they're leaving it up to the residents to let them know if they want to set up a district.
But at that time, when we looked into this, at about maybe 9 months ago or a year, I thought the town was gonna be like the
That might
town's
be.
district in the village, but I don't, it sounds like things have changed, is what I'm saying now.
Yeah, no, and I think at that point there was discussion of the village setting up its own district and collecting the fees for it from each individual homeowner on their taxes, and then us paying the hauler. But, you know, then are we gonna be in the garbage
Then you're gonna
business?
be in the garbage business.
Correct,
Which we really don't.
which we really don't wanna do.
Yeah.
My office really is not interested in doing, because it's overcomplicated.
One more thing.
So just a question, if you want to pursue any of this, or do you want to let it just continue to allow people to participate in the town program? Just wanted to bring up the issue because several residents have mentioned it too.
There's a whole blurb in here about people, how people go about doing it. Is there any way to get this out to the public?
Yeah, they've been, it's been in every newsletter and every.
They've done a good job
Yeah.
publicizing.
I meant
But
to
for
our
the
public.
village, yeah, I mean,
If the board would like, I can add the town language onto the village website. I just swiped that quickly off the
I
town
think
site.
that's a good idea.
Is there an enrollment time period every year? Or is
Yes.
it just,
yeah.
It is every year.
so,
This year it's until April 30th, according to the website.
But this looks like it's a community initiative situation,
That is correct.
so the village is totally out of it.
Well, right, the village residents could contact the town and they could set up their own district. That's the way it is right now.
Yeah.
The question is, I had one resident that said, well, I don't want to be bothered with that, do it for me. So the question is if we want to do anything beyond what is currently available.
Peggy had a question.
Yes, I'm sorry, Peggy?
Is there any way of incorporating commercial refuse into this? Because we've got so many properties that back up to commercial residents or commercial
The
businesses.
problem with doing that is that the different businesses have different requirements. So some businesses have multiple pickups a week, different size dumpsters, different types of dumpsters. Some have grease dumpsters. So they're all paying different rates. And so that would be further complicated to try to deal with all that. And, you know, if the clerk is concerned about residential, that would be many times more complicated because of the nature of it.
I'm just thinking that one of the issues is that refuse trucks come in early in the morning and at untimely times and to collect commercial refuse. And that's kind of a unique thing for the village as opposed to the town neighborhood sort of thing. Just
We have set up codes to address the minimum times because that has been an issue. But I think the driving force behind the town's decision to do this is complaints of having, you know, garbage 4 days a week in some neighborhoods in the town, in the village.
So is the board good with me putting the town's information on the
Is
village
that
site?
okay for a step for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other member items from other
Yeah,
trustees?
I've got 4 quick ones. I can be really quick on them.
Go ahead, Dan.
A business owner approached me on Shane Place and said, we have some ideas for how we might increase foot traffic down there, mostly in the summer. I'm gonna meet with them on Friday. If anybody else has an interest in this and wants to join me,
I would like to, but what?
12:30.
we'll leave it Offline.
yeah, 12:30, it's informal,
Okay.
and
I can do that.
I'll report back
Yep.
on what their ideas are.
Okay.
Second thing is, this is Martin Luther King Jr. Week, and the programming kicked off tonight. Most of the programming's in the village this year. In fact,
A lot of it.
4 of the 5 events are in the village. Tonight's at the library. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all at the library. The Wednesday and Thursday are dynamite sessions, and I hope people can attend them. You can get, I think they're both at 6. Tomorrow's the panel discussion, and then Thursday is the I'm Not Your Negro movie showing, and then discussion after. So I hope everybody can attend that.
I'm participating
Dan,
in the
just a
panel
question, do you know how to
discussion tomorrow.
videotape those?
No, they don't.
Okay.
They're especially, they might videotape the panel.
That's what I was wondering.
The movie discussions, though, no, they're very much meant to, like, this is a safe space, and you
Right.
can, yeah. It's a good question, though, Dave. I'm sure some people will, like, Facebook Live it. I'll find that out for you, I'll let you know. Along those same lines, my third quick item is that we had discussed with the June 1st proclamation on race that we issued of printing it, framing it, and posting it in the front hall. I just want to resuscitate that, and hopefully we can get that done.
Yeah, that's really funny you said that. I just saw the frame over there, and I'm like, where did that go?
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay, thanks.
it's not lost, it's just
Sure.
not shown.
Okay.
for some reason.
And then
We'll get it up. We'll get it up.
And then the last thing, since we're done with the code, and Frank, this might be of particular interest to you, that wanted to bring back to life the grant, the 247K on pedestrian improvements, and see maybe now is a good time to start pursuing that, particularly as we enter budget season. I just wanted to bring that back to life and start talking about it. Maybe we'll get it on the next agenda or something.
I did have another memorandum. Last week and the day before Governor Cuomo's State of the State address, the Canal Authority released a draft plan for the reimagine of the canals. There has been discussion with SHPO since the beginning of the year, and despite assurances that these negative proposals weren't going forward, it appears that they are going forward. And the things that concern me most are, one proposal is to reduce the water level in the canal by 6 feet, so that it would still be usable by kayaks and the crew sculls, rowing sculls, but it wouldn't be a navigable waterway again. There's other proposals to sever sections of the canal and perhaps drain sections of the canal, decanalizing the Mohawk River and returning it to its natural state. And the problem with that is the trade of recreational boaters, which especially in Fairport and to a great degree here as well, have been a boon for economic development, would disappear. So Friday, I've contacted SHPO. I have a call into Daniel McKay, who's the head of the Preservation Services Division and is the contact person that the New York State Power Authority is sort of working to get this thing through SHPO. I've also been in touch with Aaron Tobin at the Preservation League of New York State, and Friday I'm meeting with Julie Domeretz, the mayor of Fairport. I think we're probably going to get a coalition of mayors together from canal communities to try to, number one, to find out what are they really doing, and if it will have adverse consequences for our canal, speak up early and see if we can have an impact. I'm also going to raise the issue at the February legislative meeting with NICOM in Albany.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
Frank, anything?
Nothing for me.
Renee?
Just an update from SRF on that area-wide study. They will have a draft, the target is to have us a draft technical memo with findings and professional opinions by the end of the month. That's all.
Great, thank you. DPW, Zach?
Actually, I was gonna let Steve go first.
Okay, yes, he's got a longer
You
commute.
got a longer drive, plus Stonegate.
That's all I got for a report, right?
We did.
A chance to read,
did.
one couple things I want to say in the reference to Stonegate. I had a little kickback because I used a word that I probably shouldn't have. I used the word illegal, which became a point to one of the residents. And it took me numerous emails to explain that, sorry, I shouldn't use that term, I should use connections that may not meet current code.
All right.
So if you hear any feedback from that, it took me, like I said, 3 sets of emails back and forth, and then finally, I think that issue is okay. I'd like, well, should I bring up the Syracuse thing? No?
We gotta go into executive session. It'll be 30, I promise, 30 seconds.
You wanna do that right now and get it done? Why don't we do that? We'll just walk to the front, you can all stay here.
Just, we gotta move to do that.
I would take the over on 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, all right, 5 minutes.
I'll make a motion to enter executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
I believe executive session.
I'll make a motion to return to regular session.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Like with the matter of Lily's not here?
She's,
Well, I got, the only other thing I got, simple is that there are storm, water classes, 1 a month for the next 4 months. That I would ask that, Zach and I, he may not go to everyone, but that we be authorized.
authorized, yes.
All right, one of the things, Steve, you've got is that zoning approval letter. And where is it?
Oh, yes, yes.
9496 South Street.
Yes. And I call 9496 South Street is a current duplex. In the current code, it is a not authorized use. It's technically pre-existing non-conforming. I got a call from a gentleman today who's looking to refinance the property. They need a zoning compliance letter. So, we're kind of trying to figure out how to address that. You know what I mean?
My thought would be that the letter make clear that it is not a permitted use, that it's pre-existing non-conforming and therefore permitted by the zoning code.
It's grandfather.
Yeah, it's permitted by the zoning code, it's specifically zoning compliant because it's pre-existing non-conforming.
Okay.
But I think it's important to put in the letter that it's not a permitted use.
Okay, and because I was going through the code today, and I don't know if the last code took the pre-existing non-conforming as having a time limit. This one does not.
That's because we never were gonna enforce it.
Okay.
There was just no reasonable way that we could grandfather them out without short of a lawsuit, which we were never gonna bring anyway.
Yeah, you got a couple duplexes down at that end.
Is this the brown shingle place, the brown shingle building?
I don't think so. I think this is the white one that's down in
Okay.
9496. Yeah.
Closer to 96.
Yeah. All right, that's all I have.
May I just ask,
Pardon?
may I just ask a question?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Talking about near 96, the home where it appears somebody is squatting. I'm not certain about
Talking
that.
about the last house?
The last house, they have no garage door and they have a big piece of plastic up.
Tarp over it.
Yeah.
I could go, I should at some point probably go after them as a property maintenance issue under the code. Yeah.
He's squatting?
No, they're not squatting, but that house has been, from my understanding, has been an issue with the village for a long time. So it is something that I will address. And I noticed the tarp over the thing, but the tents are gone, so. Progress. Yeah, little baby stuff, and I'm kind of nervous about that house, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Understand.
Yeah.
Understand.
Bob, real quick,
Yep.
I know you said authorized for them to go to class, but can I have a motion from the board?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And that's for Steve and
And Zach.
Stormwater.
Yeah, there's also the Stormwater Conference in Buffalo.
Oh,
That's the third.
that should be a separate motion then. And who's attending, both?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to authorize Steve Loth and Zach to attend the Stormwater Conference in Buffalo on what day?
March 31st.
Okay.
On my birthday.
All right.
happy
Is
birthday.
that right?
Everyone loves stormwater.
That was my birthday present.
Is that really what you wanna do on your birthday?
What, hang out with me?
I will second that.
Do we have a
Yeah,
second?
spend it with Zach.
I'll second.
That's what I want to do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I come?
All right, all good? I can
Okay,
go?
great, yes, you can.
Thanks,
Good
Steve.
night, everybody.
And thanks for your write-up on Stonegate, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, DPW.
Y'all have my report, do you have
Yes.
any questions?
Scared me. So where are we with Stonegate?
Stonegate, I don't know what, reported to you guys, I wasn't included on that.
Steve's report has a pretty good write-up on it, pretty thorough paragraph.
Okay, so then the only thing I guess I would add to that is what I have on my report, which, Ray Deercop, who lives at 4 Stonegate, when we were in there working, flushing the, we were in his front yard, and he had just installed sod, and he was pretty concerned about the sod being damaged. We tried to cover it as best as possible with plywood, but 10 guys walking through there when it's wet and soggy, it's gonna, cause a little bit of damage, so I told him that we'd be back in the spring.
Yeah.
And assess the situation from there, and ask that we do not put our typical topsoil and everyday seed down, let that be replaced as it was, so it might cost a little extra.
That's
money.
fine, that's
Okay.
fine, we wanna make them happy.
Yep. And given that the sewer is no longer considered an emergency state, I am asking that Article 8 of the exemptions of solicitation section of the procurement policy be applied for the CIPP lining of the 6-inch VCT section of the sewer main to secure Scanex to do the work without receiving multiple quotes.
I did have a question on this. So my question was, we still don't know what caused it.
Right.
So how do, and yes, we know the line is clear, and that's great. But since we don't know what caused it, can we say that it's out of the state? Out of the emergency state?
Well, the line's running clean.
Yeah.
The roots, they're out there in every sewer. They're in every sewer line. There's nothing impeding the flow, so it's not an emergency state at this point, so.
Well, and I think also to add to that, the fact that we found a cutter that was obviously left from somebody doing private work in our sewer. We don't use a cutter, so it wasn't from us. We have a likely cause of it, we just haven't pinpointed down to exactly where it happened.
Yeah, it's,
But the evidence is
so hard
there.
to pinpoint what actually caused it, so.
We have a pretty good assumption of what it might have been.
Yep.
I just wanted to kind of, something I left out of the report, but that I may, or ask that Justin like to be the focal point of all back and forth, so that we're not getting every resident to, because he's the head of the homeowners association. I reached out to him and said, are you willing to be the liaison for the stormwater issue? And I've been going back and forth with him with all communication, so that it stays at one person, one point, so we're not having 10 different people, to try and keep things.
That makes complete sense.
And being back and forth with number 8, Glennis from number 8, and in the whole back and forth, which I'll forward the emails to you tomorrow, just stating that because of the actions of Roto-Rooter, we can never pinpoint where or what, I said, we don't know whether your water started to recede at 30 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet. So we'll never know that because it's past the point. And I reached out to Justin and said that if there's problems in the future, we would ask that the residents contact either Zach or myself if you're having a drain problem, so that we may look at it prior to having an outside vendor touch your home, and we would be able to discern what the problem, where it lies. Right.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
So, given that 600 feet of the roughly 1,200 feet of sewer that's running along Stonegate is 6-inch VCT, which is clay tile. It's old, it's been beat up, and it does need a liner in there, and it'll protect it, but it's a plastic pipe for the next 60, 70 years.
Right.
So minimal maintenance after that, and any kind of blockage is going to be something artificial being shoved in there, and something that shouldn't be in there.
It'll be obvious.
Yeah. So I'm waiting on a quote back from Scanex as to the cost of the job to line that pipe. Going off of county contract, there's a company that is Queens, or something like that. Queensbury. They hold county contract, and I have not reached out to them, but there's pay schedules in the list of contracts. And for a pipe of our diameter, Full section rehab would be $55 per foot cost, so it's gonna be roughly around $33,000. And I'm assuming ScanX is gonna be pretty close to that cost. We use ScanX to line the sewers on Jefferson before DOT came through last year, and they did a great job. I'm very comfortable with them doing the work on this road, and that's why I'm asking for them to be able to do this.
Do they both use the same product, that foam that goes through and then hardens?
Yes, yep, an epoxy resin coated,
Okay.
Good, so it's a good solution, and how many feet are we looking at?
about 600.
600 feet, that's a good long stretch.
Yeah, it's a good stretch. And they'll go through and open up all the laterals, back up, and get a camera, a video of the liner in there after the fact. They've already done half the work, seeing, that they've already cambered the line and cleaned the line out. So that's another
So
cost
it's
that
prepped, it's prepped for this.
Yep, and they're familiar with what they're gonna be working with, so it'd just be, the next step in the process, that will come through and just do it. So I am asking for them to,
I will make a motion to approve the request of the DPW superintendent to authorize ScanX to install 600 feet of liner on the sewer on Stonegate, or to get a proposal from them. Yes.
I feel, I would feel more comfortable. I'm not voting on this issue. I would like to disclose that the owners of ScanX are friends of mine, so I wouldn't want any
So you want to
appearance of
recuse yourself?
impropriety.
Yep.
So I will not vote on this issue.
Okay. Okay, so I made a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Billy abstained.
I abstain
Okay.
due to the appearance of impropriety.
so the sewer is running fine as it is, we're still keeping an eye on it, but ScanX probably will not be here until the springtime, until the weather breaks to do the work. Temperatures can cause problems for the curing of the pipe. They do have the means to be able to do it in cold weather, but it's better to do it when it's warmer.
Do it when it's warm.
Yep,
And,
so-
and we'll also be able to restore things more easily now,
Yeah.
so.
Alright, the village village hall downspouts, Easton Specialties will be doing the work, going by the quote that they submitted to us last
Which has
month.
been approved, right?
Yep, so I'm just waiting for him to get the parts, and then he's gonna let me know when he gets the parts, and then we'll be through to do the work.
Good, okay.
And again, following the same article, they have the exemptions of solicitation for them to do the work. I don't know if that's something that has to be, a motion has to be done for that, or the approval that you would get from last month is
Well,
sufficient,
it'll be a write-up to a company.
so I can use that same.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve Farrell has resigned.
Any prospects?
Well, yeah, actually, I've got a couple applicants so far, but they're green kids, without any sewer experience, so I think we're gonna have to sit down and reevaluate the position and see where we can go with that. I'd much rather have someone in here that has the skills,
Experience, right.
but, I think we're just gonna run into more complications with that.
Okay.
Having a green kid in here that has no experience, we're also gonna run into complications with that, so I'm trying to
Balance between the two.
yeah, and I'm not sure. So I figure at some point if we could sit down and discuss this, and we'll probably have to include Mary for budget reasons.
Yep. What, do we wanna set up a time, Frank, to sit down with Zach? Do you wanna,
When is that?
I'm available all week long.
All this week?
Besides tomorrow.
Thursday?
Yeah, I got a lunch on that too. Thursday, that's fine.
Thursday, what time?
Morning,
9:30?
afternoon,
9:30 in the morning?
that works for me. Will Mary be around?
Tomorrow?
Thursday?
When, Thursday? Yes.
We'll do it then.
Okay.
On the calendar.
What time is that? So I can-
9:30.
9:30.
Okay, what else?
The tree inventory has been edited, and I handed it off to Michelle Degna, who's gonna be updating all the information.
Great.
She's also working on an interactive map map similar to the street light and sewer maps that she has for the village trees, which would be great because I can access it out in the field and make.
Do we have a
changes.
tablet that you can actually?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep, so it'll
Excellent.
be very nice. I can, as we're planting the tree, I can, or cutting the
So
tree
if
down.
Steve and I do an inventory, we can take that with us and
Yeah,
mark it up as we go.
Yep.
Okay, great. Or whoever, not Steve.
if you want to take Steve, you can. Yeah, gotta talk to him there too. Stormwater conference, we covered that, and stormwater management training series. Other stuff that we have done is taking down the holiday decorations, plowed salted roads and sidewalks. And the UFPO stakeouts, patched potholes. Speaking of which, out in front here, we have a road plate sitting over a sinkhole that just formed today.
That's not good.
Catch basin is starting to open up, it's failing. 24 inch.
Is that the states or?
Yeah, so I brought them in today and they're looking at it and I can't guarantee that they're gonna do anything with it because of that, from 1971. I think this might fall on that, but given the emergency situation, I'm trying to get it.
Remind me of the law.
If they have not been into that basin or done anything with that pipe since 1971, then it falls into the jurisdiction of the.
Because they rebuilt the road out here in 1984 when they redid the bridge.
Well, hopefully they have a record of it.
Well, I'm sure they do because we have drawings upstairs
All right.
from the project.
All right, well, as long as they have some already.
And I know they moved the curbs, so I'm pretty sure they had to do something with the catch basins.
Okay, so maybe they won't argue it at all. But he's gonna put it in as an emergency, so hopefully they'll be able to get to it the next few days. Otherwise, we're looking at about 2 weeks out before someone can get to it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one is their responsibility.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Because that pipe is rotted both going north and south, so that means that they're probably gonna have to trench the road.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah,
It's a
20.
traffic calming exercise.
Yeah.
I like it. No, the end of the turning lane, we can shorten the
Yeah.
turning lane.
Okay. Why are they shortening, or narrowing the sidewalks on State Street Bridge?
Because of the new railing, whatever they
It's
call
gonna
it.
be wider, it's gonna be, they have, no, actually, what it is, they have to set the railing further back from the edge of the slab, it's a code requirement, so they're just moving it into the
But since
sidewalk.
they have to take the curb, they're taking everything out, so there's no reason that we couldn't have it restored to the same width
The,
and just go into the road a little bit.
the width as it is perfect for us
It
to get our
is.
machines through there.
Oh, that's another data point. I wish we would have
Well,
brought that
let's send them
today,
an
but we-
email.
I tried
Right,
talking
because-
them into widening the sidewalks on North Main Street too, but they said they
Eventually
wouldn't
we'll
do it.
get there because that thing's a German foxtrot. You can't even get, I mean, you can't get two people.
You have
across it, so-
to, if I'm walking the dog and someone is coming the other way with a baby carriage,
Yeah, you
I
can't.
have to walk it, step into the street
Yeah.
to get around.
So
it.
you
No, it's awful.
communicated that to them as well, that it's
Yes,
perfect? You
actually-
don't have to do anything fancy with why is that? How do you do this one differently than you do State Street?
State Street's nice and wide, so we get either one of our Bobcat or a tool cap on
Okay.
the sidewalk to be able to plow it. The tool cap barely fits on this one, it constantly falls off.
Mhm.
And if there's a little bit of snow that doesn't want to move, it pushes the Bobcat up.
Okay, that may
So
help
we
us with that one.
Yeah, I talked to the engineers on
Okay.
December 17th. They actually made a mark on their map
Okay.
about that. I don't know if they're gonna.
Well, let's bring that up against, about the
Yeah.
Main Street, because there's no reason, that there's no turning lane in the middle, they could just bring the lanes
Yeah.
together and it would be, it's so.
I tried pointing that out, but you didn't want to hear it, and I don't know. And also, I think there's I don't know if it's a standard, but if a curb in the side, if the curb abuts the sidewalk, which is directly on the street, then the sidewalk is supposed to be 7 foot, as far as I understood.
Correct.
All right, so.
Yeah.
And that's what State Street is now, and they want to reduce it to
Right.
6.
So that's another data point as
Yeah.
well. All right. Are you done with that? I had a quick question about light bulbs, because I can't remember who, on the Harp lights. Do you call RG&E? or
Yeah.
There are a couple out on Monroe again.
Again? All right.
Yeah, there's one in front of our house and I think in front of the Drake's house as well, but it's been dark for, I don't know,
Okay.
6 weeks now.
I'll come in tomorrow morning and tag them.
Okay.
Put 'em in. The two that you called me about, those are fixed at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we picked swept roads today and a couple times, last month because it's been so warm out, we've been able to get that out, which has been kind of nice. We've picked up leaves and brush, our 2019 totals, leaves was 613 tons, which is 1.226 million pounds of leaves. Brush is 411 tons, which is 822,000 pounds.
Is that more or less than last year?
Actually, a little bit less.
Okay, well, because we were all late getting our leaves out, and most of us still have them out there. They
Yeah,
all
a lot of
fell,
them are still sitting in the yard.
What happened while I was gone? Because my lawn was spotless when I left,
I don't know, it must have
and
been
I came
Ferris.
back and now it's a mess.
Oh, okay.
All the neighbors were coming up and dumping their stuff on it, you know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in the night, they were coming up and just dumping.
It sure looks like it.
There's a lot of wind.
The wind
You
came
went on, yeah.
Anyway,
Started cleaning and painting the flower urns and the copper and memorial balls are pollards are polished now, so a lot of busy work and.
some of the benches need to be refinished.
Yep.
Where those two, like, that say Zorno on them in the East Pavilion, they're pretty rough.
Alright, yeah, those don't seem to be holding up too well. Those are the old ones, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So we just hit them last summer. We'll, start bringing benches in too as soon as we find a free moment and, start finishing those too.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Zach.
Zach, real quick, I gotta lay down.
Zach
You do
gets all
those
the-
two?
He gets all the headache jobs.
I have
Thank
a
you,
question
Zach.
while this gentleman's up there. I was just wondering, you might have seen it, Bob, at the end of Lincoln Avenue where it hits Sutherland Street, the sidewalk on either side, there aren't real curb cuts there at all. You ever notice that?
Yeah, no,
I mean, they're pretty ragged. I mean, my brother's in a wheelchair, and he'd have a tough time bouncing over those. He lives in Henrietta, he doesn't live here. It's a moot point, but
That's something that we
it's
can
been that
address
way
for
for
years
years
and
and
we're just entering our budget, but it's good to know, and, what we've been trying to do is as we go around the village replacing sidewalks, making them conform as we go through, but we have a lot that are like that, and you're absolutely, those are particularly bad because the curb is high there.
yeah, and just with all the work that they did at Spiegel Center and stuff like that, and, so.
And it's a busy road because of all the kids from school.
Yeah,
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike.
yeah.
Okay,
Bob,
yeah.
I'm going to the board's indulgence. My niece just had surgery, and she just got out of surgery, and I have to be able to talk to my sister.
So you want to excuse yourself?
Yes, please.
Okay, for the record, excusing Lily for a health issue of her family. Okay. Yeah,
The only thing I really have is, I'm concerned that the CCA is kind of floating around out there, and it's not, I don't know.
articulated.
I don't know, I mean, it got hot while we were doing our code review, so I didn't really have a lot of time to give to it. But it needs some direction about what we want to do. Rocktricity doesn't want to be a contract agent, but I really don't have the background to understand it. So I don't know whether it's you and the town getting on the same page and then telling the attorneys what you would like to do with this agreement and how you want to proceed.
let me talk to Bill Smith, because I think for the most part, we can piggyback with what the town is doing, and let me get an update and see where it is.
Yeah, it's just sitting there, not much is happening, and I wanted to see if we should be
Well,
getting it going.
I'll call Bill Smith and I'll get an update.
Other than that, I really don't have
Quick
much.
comment on that, I've heard from Sue Q, she would like to speak to the board at the second February meeting.
Why don't we set that up then?
Great.
Okay, that's great, okay. Is that it, Jeff?
That's it.
All right, thank you, you're excused.
All right.
Dorothea, your report?
Well, we'll start with Mary's report, let's see if there's any really call outs.
I reviewed the vouchers.
Yeah, me too.
Just a
I have-
couple, Pittsburgh food covered, the security for candlelight night.
Yeah, my question was on
I
that.
have a question about that too, so
You go first.
Oh, okay. Do we share that with the town?
No, we do not.
Why not? Have we had any discussions about that? I mean, it's a big, you're smiling, does that mean you think of that every year?
I brought that up,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it's a town,
We have to
it's
share it.
promoting our town
Exactly.
as much as it is the village. I don't know if that's the same question you have then.
That is the exact same question that I had.
Okay, and that Frank has had apparently, so when do we need to bring that up and with whom and how?
It should
I
be
thought there was a
a
sharing of
joint venture with the
expenses.
chamber, the town,
Right.
and the village.
Don't we pay something?
I'll bring it
Pay
up to-
something?
We pay for security, and they do, there is some I don't know exactly what they do, but
The town makes the standard donation, from what I understand. I don't know if they're assisting in other areas.
Mhm. Okay, so
This
maybe-
was in place long before I came, that
Right.
the village, I think because we insisted on some
There was some
security.
kind of quid pro quo that I recall.
Okay.
And I don't know what
We
it
do
is.
not give the
It'd be good to
standard,
clarify that, to know.
Right.
yeah, we don't pay a donation. This is our donation
Okay.
for the event.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, it's grown significantly, so I'm sure we need more.
I can say that the
Security.
cost is
Did I know-
about
Oh,
double,
Jeff?
and actually
Take
it's
care,
gone
Dave.
down.
Oh.
So we have been watching that, so
All
some
right.
changes were made a few years ago with the way who we contracted to do
Okay.
it. So it has decreased somewhat. So I do not know how this started, but this was in place when I came, and I was told in Hartsig that village pays for the security for this, and this is how it's been done for so many years.
It's-
So, and I'm not saying it can't change, I just.
Right.
I know that the history, it started as a village event and then the town got more and more involved as it grew. So that's probably why really it was really only the village involved years ago and eventually
It's an
But-
opportunity to look at it all and.
Yeah.
partnership and collaboration,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
Yep.
There's a chamber event on Thursday night that I'm going to, and I'll see everybody there, so I'll gently ask questions about that. How do the expenses work on these? How is that shared? And we'll
Yeah.
go from there. I have a feeling they pay the heavy end of the check.
Right, I think so too.
Yeah,
They're doing
but it's
such a
worth
good job.
asking around.
Yeah.
Sure. And Bob, you talked to Bill a lot. That's a good question for him too. What was our annual donation on the, what is that? We make a donation to the food cupboard? It says gear fund annual donation.
There is a, money that was donated to the village in 1905, which is the Gears Fund. And, years ago, we didn't know what it was for, and so we researched it. We found in the archives that it is for, the benefit of the poor. So annually, what we've decided to do is make a donation to the food cupboard.
Great,
All right.
wonderful.
And Scott Harbor, that was the other call out. So that's all. Is there any other questions, concerns?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, real quick, Mary wanted to bring to request the board to start budget meetings. She's hoping to start January 22nd or 23rd. Is that an available date?
Yeah.
And a time frame. Earlier the better.
22nd, what time?
What time would your board like? Would we start like 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock would be fine with me.
I can be here a little after 5. I have carpool drop off, and they have to be at Calkins Road at 5, so if you all can start,
Would
I'll
you
be in
rather
here
do
like
5:30?
5:05.
5:30? Would that work?
No, I mean, I can be here like almost at 5.
Okay,
But
all right, so we'll
I
just,
think we should stick with 5, and, but knowing that I may walk in 3 minutes late.
that's fine.
Okay.
The question, and the other thing she requested, if you have any things you would like to see, needs, let her know ahead of time, documentation. She'll try to prep as much as she can as we go forward.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll start that process then and set the schedule as we move forward. On the clerk side, I do have something.
While we're still on Mary's stuff,
Yes.
invoices for legal bill, the last round of them went out. Some of them have come back, some of them haven't. I got them yesterday from Mary. They've gone out to the board chairs. They've been pretty good, except for one, about getting them back quickly. So expect a batch of them to come into you guys over the next week, I'd say.
Okay.
And we're on time with them. There's no laggards there.
Okay.
Real quick, one more thing
Yep.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
We have moved, PZBA, HPV have changed their meeting times to be a little more reflective and a little earlier. Is this something of interest to the village board, since we seem to end up here sometimes at 10, 11 o'clock? Maybe starting like 6:30, moving our meeting time as well? Or do we want to stay at 7? I'm just reaching out to you, get an opinion.
I'd like earlier. These go so late.
I'd be okay with 6. Does that work for you, Frank?
Yeah.
Renee?
So, yes. I don't
Then we can always look at public hearings at 6:30, 7 o'clock,
Yeah.
you know, if you're worried about reaching the public, but I
Right.
think it
We
would be a
could
problem.
do the reports in the first hour, which we used to do. That way Steve wouldn't have to stay
Right.
there so late
Yeah.
and he could go home. So I think that's a good plan.
Okay, I can move the reports around. The reason we moved them to the end was in case something came up during the meeting, you had the people
Right.
there for the departments, but we can go ahead and do that. All right, so I will move the next meeting to 6 o'clock. Do we need a motion second to set that?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The one caveat is I would say we should probably keep public hearings at 7 or 8 o'clock so people can do it, come after
Yeah,
dinner.
I
and-
like the 7 o'clock for,
Yeah.
After
Okay.
work.
Yeah.
All right, I will change our schedule to reflect the new time. Thank you so much.
Okay. We have minutes from October 8th, 2019.
I have one change to this.
And where are you, Dan?
I'm on page 4 of the minutes.
Yep.
Toward the bottom, I'll just wait for Dorothy. Toward the bottom of the page, trustee Keating requested an addition. The wording in this is a little challenging. What I was looking for was a process to talk about how we'll update the laws, not an actual update of the laws. The way it reads, I'm looking for an update of the laws.
Do you want to propose
Um,
a wording?
requested a plan to address additional work needed. Yeah. That's basically it.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 8th as amended by Dan. Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have October 22nd.
My notes.
I have no changes on these.
I had no changes on the
I have
22nd.
no changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 22nd. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have November 12th.
My iPad is not working.
Any corrections?
I need a minute.
Do you want to look at mine again?
No, it's I can't find my notes on the notes.
Oh, okay, okay. Take your time.
I'll tell you the pure literature. I'm gonna be a best-selling writer.
Yeah, it's not working. So I have nothing to add there.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 12th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to November 21st.
Just wanna check who's present, because they get tricky
Yeah.
with attendance here. I think we had some people out. November 21st, Bob, Lily, Dan, and Renee. Frank, you're gonna have to abstain from the 21st.
Oh, I did have one on the 12th.
Do you want to go back, Dan?
I'll leave it. It's not the end of the world.
Okay. Anything on November 21st?
It's coming. Hold on a second. No.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 21st. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Dan beat me to it.
And
And Frank abstained. Okay, next we have December 10th.
And I think it's just the three of you again, not
Yep.
Frank.
Yep.
I have no changes.
I have no changes either. Renee?
Not.
Okay. I'll make a motion to
Three of
approve
us.
the minutes of December 10th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
We have minutes from December 17th.
Did you? I don't think I got that far.
I am officially caught up.
They're
Except
pretty
for-
short. They're only 3 pages.
I don't see tonight's in here.
For 3/4 of that. I almost did it for the hell of it.
Challenge accepted.
So where are we?
17.
December 17th, 3 pages. I have no changes.
I'm almost there. No changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 17th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Renee got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.